Hello, Forge fans! This is Falco again from the German YouTube channel Zocket. Welcome to a little beginner's guide around the first big age in Forge of Empires, the Bronze Age. We will take a look at what new features, buildings and units there are to discover in this age. I'll also explain some basic components of the game. But before we start, please subscribe to this channel to never miss any videos about Forge of Empires. In Forge of Empires, every player starts in the Stone Age, but will leave this short starting age already during the tutorial and switch to the Bronze Age, the first big age with lots of new features and functions. Among them are new buildings for your city, goods and military units for negotiating and fighting, as well as guilds, a tavern for your friends, the campaign map and events. For example, instead of just having huts to gain population and produce coins, you can now choose between stilt houses, thatched houses and chalets. These not only give you more population, but in particular have different production cycles for coins. Depending on how often you want to log into the game, you can choose between 15-minute, 1-hour and 4-hour production cycles. Of course, a combination of different houses could also be a good idea. While the houses all occupy the same amount of tiles in your city and can easily be exchanged, it's a bit different with the new production facilities for supplies. Here you now have a pottery, a blacksmith and a fruit farm to choose from after they have been unlocked. All of them have the same production cycles between 5 minutes and 24 hours, but occupy different amounts of space. So it might be a good idea to build one instead of the other just because of the available space in your city. However, it should be noted that larger production facilities often have a more efficient production per tile. In addition to the new production buildings, you will also unlock new cultural buildings and decorations which do not differ in their functionality from the Stone Age buildings. The Bronze Age also brings completely new building types: military buildings, goods buildings and great buildings. The tutorial in the game already teaches you the basics about military buildings through, where you can recruit and use the spear fighters. However, spear fighters are only one type of unit, light units to be exact. There are 4 other categories: heavy units, ranged units, artillery units and fast units. Each of these unit types has an advantage and disadvantage in combat against certain other types. Light units, for example, are especially strong against fast units. Fast units are strong against ranged units and so on. The same principle applies to the weakness of each unit. Light units are weak against heavy units, and so on. You should try to achieve a good balance of units in your city and always try to deploy the strongest possible units in combat against your opponent's army. If you don't like to fight, or if it is too much trouble for you to build an efficient army, this is not a problem. There are also 5 goods production sites. In Bronze Age, these produce wine, wood, stone, dye and marble. Production costs a few coins and supplies. However, it is not recommended to build all goods production facilities because in 2 of the 5 buildings you can produce 5 times as many goods for the same cost and in the same time as in the remaining 3 buildings. But to do this, you must first unlock the goods deposits for these buildings on your campaign map. You have already been introduced to the campaign map in the tutorial. For the Bronze Age, there are 4 provinces, each with a different number of sectors that you can capture. You have to either fight for them or buy them. If you capture a sector, you will receive some resources as reward. However, if you conquer entire provinces, you can receive much greater rewards. These include larger amounts of resources, PvP towers, where you can compete with other players, expansions for your city, and also goods deposits. The Bronze Age has 2 goods deposits. These are different for individual players and allow you to produce 5 times the amount of goods in the corresponding goods production facilities. So it might be much more worthwhile to produce only 2 goods in much larger quantities instead of trying to produce all 5. You can then trade your surplus on the marketplace with other players who have unlocked other goods deposits and produce other goods in large quantities. To do this, you can accept the offers of others or create your own offers which other players can then accept. This is also how you get access to other goods cheaply, which you can then use to negotiate on the campaign map if fighting is not your thing. Players you can trade with on the market are your neighbors, friends and guild members. You can see exactly who they are once you unlock the social bar in the middle of your Bronze Age research tree. You'll always have about 80 neighbors randomly assigned to you every few weeks. Also, you can send a friend request to any player or join a guild in which you can meet many other players once you unlock guilds towards the end of Bronze Age. Guilds have many other advantages as well. Not only can you interact with many other players, but you can also share the same goals and play new game modes that are only available for guilds later on in the game. This makes you all progress even faster as a community and is a lot of fun. Your friends, on the other hand, can visit your friends' tavern daily. And you can also visit your friends' taverns every day. For every friend that sits down at the table, the owner can collect a few silver coins that can be invested in a bigger and nicer tavern or helpful effects for their city. Right at the beginning of the Bronze Age, you will also unlock events. These are various minigames that take place every few weeks. You can access them via the event badges on your screen. Events always have a special theme. They can be big sporting events or seasonal occasions. In any case, there are always big prizes to be won. At the end of the Bronze Age, you unlock the chat system. In contrast to communicating via the message center, many more players take part in chats here. For example, you have a chat that all players in your world can read. That's thousands of potential recipients. Here you can usually get a quick answer to almost any question about the game. One type of building I haven't talked about yet is great buildings. These are very special buildings that can change their production output gradually. You do this by upgrading them to the next level using forge points. In Bronze Age, there is the Statue of Zeus, which makes your army stronger, and the Tower of Babel, which brings more population and produce random goods. So there's something for both merchants and fighters in Bronze Age. I hope my tutorial answered some of your questions for a better start in the game. If you have any further questions, feel free to post them in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you don't want to miss any future videos about Forge of Empires. See you soon!